Hey there, good morning. It's Sam with Golf Garage. Wanting to talk today about some really simple things that we can do with our setup to make sure that before we even start the process of swinging that club, that we're getting into really consistent patterns, both with the ball position in our stance as well as the width of that stance. I work with a lot of people, and when they come in and they're struggling with ball striking consistency, a lot of times when I just watch them hit golf balls, switching between a pitching wedge and a 7-iron, they have real inconsistencies with how wide that stance is, where that ball is, and the position of their stance. That's gonna, before we even start getting into the swing, things that we can fix. And so the first thing I really want to touch on is the width of our stance, right? If I'm gonna use this hula hoop as an example, right? If this is representing the bottom of my swing, when I swing a golf club, I'm swinging it on this radius, on this big arc represented by this hula hoop here, right? When my stance gets really wide, you see how the bottom of that hula hoop, the low point of my golf swing, goes further down into the ground. When I get really narrow, stance gets really narrow, you see how the low point of that golf swing now comes up, right? And it's no different when we're holding a golf club. So when I'm holding a golf club here, I'm holding my pitching wedge. Very generally speaking, I want to feel like the outsides of my feet here are roughly in line with the outsides of my shoulder, right? A great way you can do this is just put a simple yardstick down. When I stand here, the outsides of my feet are at 16 inches and about 36 inches, so about 20 inches or so. Now, when we go out on the golf course, we don't have yardsticks with us. We can't use these things. But when you're practicing, you can definitely bring these devices in. Really simple things to build consistency. Golf is hard enough, so anything that we can do to build a little bit of consistency in our setup is always going to go a really long way. So here with my pitching wedge, I always want to feel like I'm maybe about 20 inches. Not trying to get too analytical, but again, about a little less than 2 feet apart. And every time I go to set up that golf club, I'm in that same position. If I were to get too wide, it's going to be really easy for me to bottom out that club way too early. And if I get too narrow, I risk starting to bottom out ahead of that golf ball to the point where now I'm missing that golf ball entirely. That's why if we're trying to hit a really simple pitch shot, we get nice and narrow because we're really trying to clip that golf ball. Why when we hit a sand shot, we want to be nice and wide, really low with that weight nice and forward, because we're basically trying to hit a controlled chunk shot. And so that's why our ball position, or I should say the width of our stance, is really important. So that's kind of step one. Step two is ball position, right? Very generally speaking, so when I step up to that golf ball, I want to feel like I'm in a good position. The next step is, where is that ball going to be in my stance? Very generally speaking, that golf ball in our stance should sort of live on a spectrum between what I call our midline, our zipper, our nose, the center of our forehead, you know, right in the center of that baseball cap that we're wearing, and all the way in the front off that left big toe. So basically every club in the bag for a standard shot that you're going to hit for an approach shot, a tee shot, outside of the really specialty ones like a bunker shot, you know, like a little pitch and run kind of shot, very generally, we're going to live between that center of our stance and the big toe of our left foot if you're a right-handed golfer, right foot if you're a left-handed golfer. So with the shorter clubs, those shorter clubs, they're shorter, they need less time to pass through. Very simple. We want to feel like that pitching wedge is going to kind of go right in that midline of our body. For the driver, if I pull the driver out, I want to feel like that ball is now moving a little bit more forward in my stance, allowing that longer club to pass through, right? These are some really simple things that we can do with our ball position that's going to increase our efficiency, increase our ball striking in and around the golf course. One thing we can also note is that our ball position has a really big impact on the path of the club, so what we call our club path. I work with people, and if you want to hit a draw, you want that club path to be out to the right with our face closed, and it creates that nice little draw. Or you want that club path to be left with an open face, creates that nice little fade. So really simply here, as I step up to it, if I want to feel like I want to hit a nice consistent little draw shot, the ball goes back in my feet to promote hitting rightwards on that golf ball, right? There. Club moves out to the right, and that's going to create a little bit of that draw shot. And if I want to feel like it's going left, right, then that ball comes a little further forward in my stance, and I swing a little bit more across it, create a little bit more of a cut shot. So there's really interesting things that we can do with our ball position and the width of our stance outside of just our standard shots, which are going to increase our ball striking consistency and some really simple things that we do on the golf course. So again, in recap, find a position when you're working, find that yardstick, find something that's going to work for you to help kind of measure this. Again, for me, I pull this yardstick out, and my shoulder width, I'm feeling like I'm about 20 inches wide. You see shoulders down to my feet, nice and consistent. If I'm down here, I'm bottoming out too soon. If I'm too narrow, then I'm hitting the top of that golf ball. I'm not having that nice ball to turf interaction. Right? So that's one. So we want to make sure we feel like our stance is nice and consistent. And then ball position, we want to live on that spectrum, that the shorter clubs are further back in our stance and the longer clubs move further up. So pitching wedge would be somewhere around our midline. Our driver is going to be somewhere closer to that front line. So we want to feel like that driver is closer to the front of that spectrum off that left foot for the right-handed golfer. And then, this is my 7-iron here. And so 7-iron, right, somewhere in the middle. So pitching wedge is about here, driver is about there. 7-iron is going to find its way nice and comfortably somewhere in the middle. So try these things when you're working and try to see if you can find the right position for you. Everyone's a little different. I'm a smaller guy, and so what I need, I might be a little bit narrower than, someone who's well over 6 foot tall. But generally speaking, we want to create any sort of consistency. Anything that we can do to increase our consistency on the golf course, starting with our setup, is going to make us a better golfer.